Well, good morning, good afternoon to you all. Welcome to Zyxel's Tech Talk. My name is Tri Nguyen. I'm here as the product manager, sales manager here at Zyxel North America. If you can hear me, unfortunately right now, my attendee list actually shows like there's people here, but I don't see your names. So I don't know if you, by you raising your hands, I could even see anything. So if you can hear me just fine, just send me a quick message in the chat. I also want it to be interactive. So in the chat box, you can always send me a message while I'm doing the presentation and we can, I can answer them as well, or you can use the Q&A section as well to make those messages to me as well, if you have any questions on that. So today I wanted to cover about what is Zyxel doing in the network AV space. So if you can, in the chat box, not just raising your hands again, because I can't see your names at all. I try to refresh it, but it doesn't show it. So in the chat, if you just put a quick yes, if you are doing anything within the network AV space, or if you want, you can type into the chat, I'm planning to, or something that I'm interested in doing. Just kind of want to get a gauge on who here is already working in the space and those who are not. So if you can do that, that'd be great. Thank you, Doug, for answering. Let's see, let's go ahead and move on to just our introductions, and then we'll dive right into this topic today. So Zyxel, as a quick introduction, if you're new to Zyxel, we are Zyxel Networks. We've been in the business for 30 years, since 1989. I'm based out of the US headquarters in Anaheim, California. We have 100 million devices that create global connections worldwide, 600 employees, 700,000 businesses use our products, and we serve over 150 markets globally. We are internationally recognized for our innovation and our design, award-winning across different areas, different aspects of technology, in our security spaces, in the SMB, and also in the telco space as well. And we pride ourselves in being able to design and manage all of those feature sets and functionalities. We've been certified by ICSA for 20 years in a row, and we're just one of the few vendors out there who have this kind of recognition. We are solutions driven by clients and partners like yourself who provide for us feedback and information that we can then send to our R&D resources in both Taiwan and also in San Jose area in California to be able to work on specific functions and needs that you may have or your clients need in order to provide better service, better functionality, and provide for you products that fulfill your current product needs. And we have a full range of our ecosystem, from security appliances, wireless solutions, LAN internet connectivity with fiber connections, hotspot gateways, login gateways, as well as network management, both in a standalone mode and in the cloud. So really, I just say, hey, anything that's connected to a network, Zyxel has some sort of equipment that will fulfill those needs. So just keep Zyxel in mind when you have any kind of solution. Hey, I think that Zyxel may have something in place. So today we wanted to talk about network AV. How do we, how is this application becoming more and more applicable? Of course, you have network AV in different events, different venues. You have them also in hospitality. You have them in retail, in restaurants, and things like that. So how do we bring high quality, low latency video distribution to that network? And there's a lot of challenges that come into play. If you already are doing that, you may notice that there are very limited products that are there, or they have to be really high-end certified, things like that. Some challenges that you run into that really kind of stifle the flexibility of what you could do in the network. And of course, network AV now is being asked, a lot of network AV partners that we have are being asked to also deploy the network portion as well for internet connectivity, for hotspots, for guest network access, while delivering the base platform for network AV services and content delivery, and doing that in a way that is efficient and be able to handle a lot of the traffic that's going on there. So moving AV to IP, a lot of the AVs before were just cabling, but the industry has moved on to moving audio and video into the existing switch network infrastructure and be able to do it on a standard IP-based technology. And really that changes how you scale things in that network. And also be able to reach longer places as well. You're not limited by just like a coax cable or HDMI cable, or you have to find some other methods to delivering that content to, multiple screens. You're able to use a switching network to do that. Traditional AV system people who are in the industry, if they're focused mostly on the AV, they're usually not very, on the networking side, right? They are dealing with, more cabling, more like HDMI cabling and extenders, and truncating a lot of those kind of connections into a box. But moving to now a network kind of phase where the industry is moving, you have to deal with things like IGMP, making sure that the traffic of the content is not only secure, but it's also efficient, right? It's getting there without any latency. A lot of these things that can potentially impact the performance of the whole network system needs to be now an expertise or a piece of expert ability of that AV installer to have to learn. They are moving into that network space. And also the Ethernet switch providers like Zyxel, we are able to provide these kinds of applications, and we are able to do that in different scenarios and be able to provide that support to these installers. So challenges of AV over IP, traditional AV channels, again, it focuses on the system itself for AV. Usually they're isolated. You just have a box. You have your distributor of the content, and they're just connected directly to the screens, and that's your delivery method. So they're, again, less familiar with IP networking portion, and a lot of them are being asked to do the networking portion of it because, again, they're deploying switches. The expectation is, well, can you just throw in some access points? Can you break it into maybe VLANs and things like that? And sometimes that is just kind of out of the scope of what they may be used to doing. Of course, if you're just trying to finagle your way and making those devices kind of work as best as you can, and you don't have that networking expertise, there could be a lot of problems in terms of your network settings. And so that can cause issues not only for the hotspot users or maybe the clients that are using that network for other things, but also impact the actual content itself. So the delivery of content to the screens can be overall impacted and cause issues if you don't know what you're doing. Again, also AV vendors tend to limit what they can use in terms of they only use certified products just because they've standardized on it, even though there are other options that would work perfectly fine to it. So it really kind of puts a little roadblock in there that you're not really flexible on what kind of choices you have in there to do network management or even network solutions that are out there. You're limited and kind of pigeonholed into just specific, brands that say, well, this is for AV. Well, in fact, that's not really the case that should happen. So in order to have a better AV over IP application, there are some things that you have to think about. And we've been working with our partners and some technology partners to come up with how does Zyxel in our products help to provide these a better video over IP or network AV solution to the market. So multicast load sharing over the trunk really it allows for you then to take 10 gig ports or different options of that to maximize across a lot of switches. A lot of your normal day-to-day office types environments, having a 10 gig uplink is a nice to have, but in most cases when you're delivering, those are just client devices and laptops or access points that are just going to the internet. And if their internet WAN is only, maximum 1 gig, there's really no necessary reason for the backend or the entire core of that system to be all the way up to 10 gig. Now, if they have devices, you may have it going to an aggregate switch that then goes to like a backup server that may use a 10 gig connection, but typically you don't have the entire ring kind of thing that goes going all the way to 10 gig. So having to be able to do that in an AV application is critical, especially when you're increasing the number of screens that are in those locations. And of course, you're talking about, stadiums or even restaurants or maybe a sports bar, those kinds of things where they have, 10, 20, 30 screens that may be doing HD content that you might want to put high def traffic on as well. So that really kind of makes an importance to have a 10 gig kind of backbone if possible, or at least in the kind of in the aggregate level of it. Better utilizations for interswitch bandwidth. So using IGMP and be able to use the firmware to send packets through them, make sure that it's going to the right place at the right time. And be able to optimize those between multiple switches, because a lot of times your applications don't just depend on a single switch, but multiple switches that are there. So making sure that you're finding the best routes and making sure that you're not clogging up any other switches while you're serving the content to these specific screens that are here. Having flow control, be able to, again, it's all about making sure that the traffic itself is not getting overflowed, and you're sending streams of data, and so you're able to the switch is smart enough to kind of wait for it to be able to send out the next one to pause to the system and such. So we've taken action on how to provide better quality of the application itself for network AV, and be able to do it more efficiently and do it with a higher bandwidth overall. We're seeing a lot of this application as well come up in places of worship and things like that, where they're needing low latency video that is mapped into with the audio, because it's going back to the screens that are maybe displaying the content that is currently live, or in a stadium where they're doing concerts, where you're needing, again, that fast and reliable connection to make sure that those packets and those video content is going as efficiently as possible. And so what we've done is we've made our switches into, with the newest firmware, 4.70, it comes with now what we call network AV mode. So upon login and configuration for the first time, you actually get a choice. Do you want to go to a standard mode, which is what you might be used to now? It's our layer 2 managed switch, and also has a web interface again that you can use, as well as CLI connectivity, so that you can manage it outside of the GUI. But within this this interface, it lets you choose from the beginning, what do you want to go, standard mode or network AV mode? And network AV mode just allows for a more simplified design. Again, it's tailored towards a network AV kind of person who may not have expertise in the networking side of things, and it allows for them to configure all of the major things that you typically would need for network AV without being overwhelmed by all of the other kind of functionalities and features that may exist for that product. Of course, you can always do the same exact thing within standard mode, because it's not like it's any different, but the network AV mode does give you some additional views that are tailored more specifically for network AV. So it's a trade-off on what you want to do, but if you are in that network AV, if it's deployed for network AV, you want to check it out, and that's available in that 4.70 firmware. If you find our products that have that, typically though, the products that support it is our newest GS 2220 series. This is, and I'll introduce that in just a bit, but that's one of the switches. Also our XS 3800 switch, and our XGS 2210 series switch, which is our 10 gig capable switch, has this network AV mode. We will probably enhance it and provide additional support for newer models, but those are the current models that we are working with our partners to delivering for specifically network AV capabilities. We also provide an installation guide as well for those network AVs. We do a step-by-step, which we'll actually cover here in this webinar. You can actually get to that as well when you go to our website, and you see our we have a page for our network AV solution. You can actually download the file, and it has a walkthrough, and this is what it basically looks like. So when you want to get it set up, there are two options. Again, you choose between basic settings. Once you get into the network AV mode, you choose basic settings or advanced settings, right? So it's all about how to, ease of use for you if you are new to the system. So I think it's best for you, if you've never used it before, to get this into your hands and try out both ways to see what's in the basic and what's in the advanced, right? And go through the wizard. And so well, is basic good enough for 80% of the things you do, or do you need to go to advanced settings? Advanced settings really is about making VLANs and segregating the network. Of course, if you're just doing straight up AV only on this network, then basic settings will be great, and it will give you the visibility that you need. So you set up the IP address, whether it's a static or DHCP client, you put any kind of VLAN IDs that you need, the subnet, etc. So you're setting that up. You then have to change your password. You can set up your SNMP if you want to do your monitoring via an SNMP client. And then you choose the basic and the settings. So these are the two, depending on what you've chosen. Basic setup will give you that left side where it just will show, hey, these are the ports you plug in. You have these combo ports that you can use to uplink to your other switches, right? So it's not necessarily a configuration of anything. It's just shows you, hey, you have these receivers, you have the content delivery, plug them into these first, 24 ports. And then these uplink ports or fiber ports will be used for uplinking to another switch. Of course, if you choose the advanced setting, then it goes into being able to create dedicated VLANs on a mixed network. So you can choose how the VLANs are segregated and what are aggregated together. You could do link aggregation as well, where you can say, hey, multiple ports become one giant port to uplink to 4 other ports. So in this case, there's a 4 to 4. There's 4 ports that are being assigned as a link aggregate. So those 4, if it's say this is a gigabit switch, those 4 become a 4 gig connection to another switch that also needs to be dedicated for 4 ports in order to make that aggregation. And then you'll have a 4 gig pipe. Of course, you could do that with a 10 gig connection as well. So if you get a switch with 10 gig uplinks, then you can push not only 10 gig, but you can aggregate to 20 gig or maybe even up to 40 gigs for 4 ports to another switch. So that just gives you a big flexibility on the pipe that in between the switches, and be able to provide a higher throughput. Now people ask, well, why do I need that? Well, working with our video partners, we've realized that if you start adding more and more displays, and a lot of them are just doing raw, a lot of them are doing raw streaming or raw content, where they're like low compression or no compression, so that it's like lossless video getting to the display itself. Those kinds of applications eat up a lot of bandwidth. So if you can imagine, as you are using 10, 12, or 25 megs of megabits per second for content, all of a sudden, the more screens, more devices, your overall network starts having a backlog potential, beyond 1 gig, beyond a 1 gig pipe. I don't think it's going to max out, a 10 gig pipe, but even maxing out a 1 gig pipe is very possible as you're adding, 20 screens or so. You're getting really close to getting to that level of bandwidth utilization. So we found that a lot of the ideal situation in those is to make a 10 gig uplink and be able to link aggregate, or to do multiple gigabit ports to aggregate up. It also then gives you a summary at the end once you've gone through it. This is the basic settings. It tells you, hey, this is all your information that you need, your VLANs, your IPs, and those are all kind of automatically given to you at that point. And it tells you, hey, for the basic settings, you just connect the transmitters on ports 1 through 24. If you want to uplink them, use ports 25 to 28. Again, it's just to simplify the process for network AV professionals who may not have necessarily a network background. This allows for them to still do that very easily, and it's pretty straightforward with this process. And of course, you hit finish. The benefit of using the network AV mode is that the dashboard itself is also changed. The dashboard shows pertinent information about the port, the status information, the network AV status itself, like how is the IGMP doing with the VLANs, any multicast, if it's active, what's current setup for that. So multicast, IGMP, also the power usage if you're using PoE as well. It will show that within the switches, within the summary. Also, it shows whether you're in the cloud, you're doing network Nebula cloud management or not, and the link information. So that can tell you how much bandwidth is being used, what kind of IGMP leave information is set up for that specific link, and be able to give you a gauge on how your bandwidth is being used. So let's say there are some uplink ports that are there you're using for uplink. If you're seeing, 90%, 100% bandwidth utilization, then you may want to consider like, well, maybe I need to link aggregate additional ports, or I may need to deploy a 10 gig, switch in order to manage those kinds of traffic, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do and have that visibility here. And of course, we continue to evolve the product and the visibility as well. So as you're using it, if in your day-to-day you say, hey, or in your troubleshooting, you want to have visibility on certain aspects of it from a network AV's perspective, let us know. We're willing to, and we're able to enhance, and we welcome your responses for us to enhance this dashboard or add the features or the detection information. We've had requests of like, can you detect the devices that are on the port itself? And so we have implementations. The switches already can do that, but if you want it to be shown in this view per se, and you think that's important, let us know. We can add those kinds of things to this to make your job easier from a deployment standpoint, from a troubleshooting standpoint, and from a day-to-day kind of maintenance standpoint as well. Okay, so I did mention that it is offered to the cloud, but I'll talk about the cloud portion in just a bit. So the network AV application could be very complex. So that's why it's kind of, not lucrative, but it's a big application, because typically there are many different transmitters, receivers that are out there in this application going to the televisions. And now, of course, we have arrays and matrices of receivers that can be in a wall, where you have, multiple TVs that are interconnected and display as if it is 12210, our GS2220s, or aggregate it to an XS3800. Those can provide you the network platform that you need and infrastructure you need for doing network AV. We've certified with a network AV partner. A10 is established. It's a company in overseas, but they offer integrated KVM professional services and products, and they've done a lot within the AV space. And so we partner with them and work with them in order to make our firmwares and our applications that they typically use and their partners use to deploy as well. We've also worked with another company and another partner called Wirestorm that also provides network AV into the like the restaurants or in the hospitality industries as well. So we're working on getting that part of it also up and going from a marketing standpoint. So you'll see that pop up as well, that you can utilize them in order to get into the network AV space. Of course, you can then do it also yourself if you'd like, using our products. So the GS2220, which is our new product line that we introduced a few months ago, that is kind of going to be the successor for our GS2210s. And this provides you with that network AV capability, and also comes with Nebula for 1 year included within the switch itself. The XGS2210 is our 10 gig version of the layer 2 managed switch, and it has 10 gig uplinks. Again, if you upgrade your XGS to the 4.70 firmware, you'll have that network AV functionality. And our XS3800 is our kind of aggregation switch, which has both 10 gig and multi-gig connectivity, both on fiber and also Ethernet copper. So it's kind of a hybrid switch. It lets you bring in and aggregate a lot of different network switches together. So that would probably be your main switch, and then the other ones are kind of either uplinked to it, or what we see as well is a ring topology with XGS 2210s. You have a 10 gig ring on the inside, and then the devices and the screens and stuff are connected, via gigabit to that XGS switch. So it's kind of like this, but with you can have a ring of them. So an XGS 2210, you can have 3 of them to make a ring. So it just rings them up in the middle there. And of course, if you'd like to learn more on any of these switches, these products are also listed within our website. We've also done some webinars in the past, again, like our 2220 that we introduced to the market. You can check those webinars out. It's designed for convergence, of course, in their 2220 series. It's having to put together audio, video, voice, data, all of that coming together into a basically a switch network. So this GS2220, I wanted to kind of reintroduce back to you, is used in any of those situations for layer 2 functionality with the options of both web GUI and also in CLI. So it's actually the first kind of tri-mode switch. It allows for you to do standalone, it allows for you to do CLI management, and of course it includes now Nebula Cloud Managed Mode. It includes 1 year of the Pro Pack bundle. So you get 1 year of the cloud services included within the box. It has that dedicated network AV mode to set up your audio video systems really easily. And of course, layer 2 management with IGMP snooping, MVR voice VLAN for, again, convergence of the networks, being able to make sure your traffic is segregated. You don't want your voice and data to affect the video and vice versa. If there's a lot of traffic on the video, you may not want it to affect the voice. So you can set priorities and do all that. It's a smart fan design. In some of the units actually is fanless as well. So you can deploy it in the environment without having to worry about excess fan noise. And it can be used. We have PoE versions and non-PoE versions. The PoE can support up to power of 30 watts per port. And depending on the budget size, and also we use consumption mode by default, meaning that we only set aside the budget for what the device itself is actually drawing. So really it maximizes how much power or how many devices you can power up with the switch. So it includes copper and it includes fiber uplinks on the models as well. We have 8-port, 24-port, 48-port versions with the different SFP. The one thing that is a little bit different in the 48-port version is that there's a 44-port switch with some uplinks. So bonus uplinks and things like that, they're shared ports. Typically, our other models, our GS2210 was a 52 port. So you had still 46 and 2, I believe, that you could share. And so just keep that in mind as you are using the higher end switches. It's the industry's first tri-mode switch. Like I said earlier, Nebula Cloud Management includes also IPTV reporting. So some other aspects of that within the cloud, you get some visibility of it when you use it in Nebula Cloud. Standalone management with CLI, if you need to script things to automatically configure or troubleshoot things with your own software, your integrations to connect to the switch itself. And SNMP management using your third party or maybe your own in-house software, but utilizing standard SNMP to get that information and collect that into your management platform. So you get to choose how to manage it. So in the cloud platform, we've given you Nebulaflex Pro, which means that it will work with all the pro features for 1 year. And if for some reason you decide not to, or don't want to, or don't need the Nebulaflex, the pro versions functionality, you can then go to a free version. But of course, you'll lose some of the functionalities that you may have actually wanted to use. So like the Pro AV functionality, the network AV is part of the Pro if you want to use it within the cloud. Or again, you can use it in the standalone mode, which doesn't have any additional yearly subscriptions or costs to that. But you get to manage it, your way. You have to use SNMP or use a third-party management software in order to manage the standalone, or you have to have your own CLI, but you can remotely manage them still through the web GUI or through CLI. But of course, Nebulaflex is something that even our network AV customers are really keen on. The partners there, like I mentioned earlier, may not have a networking background for IP networks as much. So Nebula actually gives them a very good way to deploy the switches, the gateways, and the access points for a particular site and see it all within one GUI, right? See it all under one pane of glass and be able to get it to auto provision. So creating different cookie cutters of that site, so they can create hey, this is a restaurant type number one, for 15 users or 15 screens or 20 screens, and they've spec'd out, okay, you need one of these gateways, one of these a couple of these access points, and these switches, and all they have to do is scan them into Nebula, assign it to this new site, copy the configurations from a cookie cutter site to that. Once it's deployed to Nebula, or once it's deployed onto the internet at the location, it will go to Nebula, grab all the configurations and for that particular site. Within a few minutes, it's now optimized and saved for that. And the deployment now happens, right? They just have to plug in the appropriate wires or any other screens to that switch. And now they can be able to get visibility on how that network looks within Nebula itself. In the standalone mode, you don't have that visibility of all those. You have to kind of log, if you have to troubleshoot, you have to kind of log into each one of the devices, which can make, for a little bit more tedious thing, if you're trying to manage multiple sites like that. So that's why I think the Nebula side is the way to go, because it's very simple to use. You get that site-wide information. And of course, if a lot of these partners are providing this as a service as well, because not only are they delivering the content as the network, but because the customer is asking them to do hotspot management or internal and guest network access as well, this Nebula portion of it gives you visibility, gives you visualized reports that you can customize to give to that customer, to say, hey, you've had 200 people log in. These are the different websites they've used. This is all the bandwidth they've used. These are the security, protection alerts and things you have access to. Then give them, these are all the different channels that have been used most often, how much, again, bandwidth has been used, all of that into a report that it can be provided to the customer, and then really gives them and gives you, some, not just information, but gives you a great way to kind of monetize or to, justify to them what you're doing within the network as a managed service. So being able to do setup, backup configurations of hundreds of different sites, you can clone them, like I mentioned, clone different sites together, and get network alerts when something goes wrong or a switch is not responding. You can deal with that and take action probably as quickly as the customer even calls you. A lot of times they may see, hey, well, that screen's down. They just leave it and don't even do anything about it, unless somebody complains. So you get to take action. You get visibility of that through that Nebula interface. So really, Nebula opens up a new era for IPTV, being able to instantly set up stuff for IPTV networks, be able to get alerts when there are potential network jams. We've enhanced the Nebula in talking with our switches to deal with different network issues that may happen when you're running IPTV type networks, long pauses when turning on IPTV, random freezes, delays between channels. We have AI that actually will alert and be able to do suggestions even on how to get rid of or to fix those potential network jams. Better utilization for what you're using it for, being able to offer those IPTV reports can tell for the end user or tell for the customer or the restaurant owner what channels are most popular, and be able to use that to negotiate and provide evidence of it, that they may only need to go to a very simplified plan for their content, right? And that's all our customers are actually using and watching. And we provide that utilization in that report. So this is an example of what that report looks like. Gives you that network analysis information, also the viewers details by channel, different channels that are being used and how many users, and data, bandwidth utilization, etc. We've also enhanced our IGMP for that bandwidth management for that IPTV as well. And you can set that up within the system, within the Nebula Control Center for that. So again, there's a lot of advantages of why to go to Nebula when doing these kinds of network AV implementations. We've also enhanced in 4.70 in these switches. We've added auto PD recovery. It's a feature that typically you only found in our IP surveillance camera switches, but now we've moved that functionality into the GS2220s as well. It's able to detect and recover devices that are being powered by its PoE using different different triggers and different aspects. So you could see if it detects by LLDP, if the device no longer responds to ping after a certain period of time, it will then try a reboot and resume power and try to bring the device back online. So again, this is helpful for a lot of different devices, including Wi-Fi access points, also devices like the distributors, the receivers for IPTV and for network AV. Those may be PoE powered, and so it can detect, hey, if that device is PoE powered, and I can detect that it's no longer responding, I can actually reboot the device, or there's no traffic come from it. I can reboot the device and see if I can recover that, and that could help with the truck roll, help with not having to go out and do that kind of support. And of course, it's primarily was made for IP cameras. And so if you have a mixed network in this kind of application that does include like a couple of pan tilt zoom cameras as well, you can also detect that camera and be able to reboot it if there's any sorts of issues by its automatically detection. So that could save a lot of time. So I wanted, since we're done with the actual content of it, I want to also remind you of our program. I have an older slide here. So the bronze, actually, we just in the last quarter, we've increased, we've given, before you get no discounts at the bronze level. But if you're currently a bronze, you're actually getting some discounts now, started last quarter, being part of the program. Of course, if you're new to the program and you just started here at Zyxel, we put you into the silver partner program maintenance, and it gives you double-digit margin through distribution in terms of a discount on top of what you already will see. You get access to deal registrations, webinars, tech support access, leasing options if you need, and some demo units. And of course, you just have to maintain a 6K in qualifying sales over a 6-month period. And if you're able to get to 12K in a 6-month period, then you get our maximum discounts there. And that's the maximum margins you get. And again, you get other things like sales engineer access, advanced replacement, on top of lead referrals as well. So we want you to get to the gold partner because we know that will give you the best margin and be able to, for us to support you. And even at 12K, that's 2K a month in sales of Zyxel products. And if you think about, if you build out a network AV scenario where you have 3 or 4 switches, maybe just say 3 or 4 switches. Typically, we have 3 or 4 switches, 3 or 4 access points, and a security gateway that is there. You're already talking right there, probably five grand kind of deployment right there. So it's based on MSRP, and so that's the deal registrations are based on MSRP. These are the actual sales of what you sell in that period of time. So we want you to get there, and however we can help you best possible, we are here to help. So if you have any questions, this is your turn now to ask any questions if you didn't have any during the presentation. If you can think of other questions, outside of this, maybe later on as you're kind of thinking through, or if all of a sudden now your ears are kind of perked up and you hear more about a project related to network AV and you want to bring us in and talk more about it, of course you can email me. It's tri at zyxel.com. Send me a message. We'd love to talk to you. Of course, if you want us to kind of help you build out or talk through a network AV application, we can always bring in our sales engineers as well to have those discussions. So if there are no questions, again, you can use the Q&A section. I'll give it a couple minutes here. We have additional webinars that are coming up the next couple weeks. So if you want to register for that, please check out your partner page or on our webinar page for all those additional ones. Since there are no other questions, again, thank you for spending these last 40 minutes with me, being able to make us your network partner in this. And we thank you. Again, my name is Tri at Zyxel, and look forward to seeing you again at another Tech Talk. We'll see you. Have a good rest of your day, rest of your week, and stay safe. Thank you.